radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening, Fade to Black. How you doing? Today is Thursday, September 4th, 2025. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Let's do this, man. All right, kiddies, here we go. We're wrapping up another week here on Fade to Black. They're all great. This week, no exception. Monday night, Christopher Dunn was here talking about the Great Pyramid and everything that is going down right now underneath Giza, underneath Egypt. Tuesday night, George Haas was here. We talked about what's on Mars. Last night, an amazing conversation with best-selling author Rebecca Pittman. Her two most favorite haunted cases here in the United States. And tonight, Jason McLean joins us. We're going to be talking about, you may not know about this, Bigfoot and Goatman in Texas. Yeah, all of that and much more tonight with Jason. I want to remind everybody that I do have 6 events coming up in addition to everything else that I am doing in 2026. Conscious Life Expo, February 20th through the 23rd at the LAX Hilton, followed by the Contact Modalities Expo, May 1st through the 3rd, 2026 in Delavan, Wisconsin, at the Delavan Lake Resort. It's a beautiful resort. Come back from that for Contact in the Desert, May 28th through June 1st, 2026. Tickets on sale this Thanksgiving Day. Then right after that, I head to Peru for the Inca Celebration of the Sun with Brian Forrester. That is June 23rd through July 1st, 2026. I come back from that and head over to the UK for the Monty Python Tour of Scotland. And that is August 1st through the 9th, 2026. Come back from that and turn around and go back to Peru. But this time it's Peru and Easter Island. And that's November of 2026 with Brian Forrester and Hidden Inca Tours. Yeah, I've got a busy 2026. Well, it's busy every year for sure. But yeah, I decided to just clear things out for the rest of 2025 so I can just focus on Beyond Belief. And I do want to give everybody the heads up. No show next Thursday. We'll have shows Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, of course. No show next Thursday because I will be filming Beyond Belief. Taping, shooting. What is correct? We don't shoot on videotape. We don't shoot on film. We shoot on hard drives. So what do we? It's not even hard drives. Well, that's even a better point. We shoot on computers. Very, very strange. I got to figure out. I'm going to come up with something new. I guess we can say shooting. We are shooting. Even that today sounds funky. But there you go. Today is my Thursday. Today is my Friday. It is your Thursday. I've got a very, very busy weekend coming up, and I've got to get straight back to work. What I am doing this weekend, I'll let you know next week, but I've got a lot of fun things that are planned for this weekend. So yeah, am I off? No, I'm never off. I never am. Like tonight. Here we go. Jason McLean is here. We're talking about Bigfoot and Goatman and other paranormal stuff in and around Texas and what is going on with that. This is what he does. He's from Texas. He lives in the Dallas area. We were just talking about that before the show. And what is it that is going on? What are people seeing? Where do they live? How do they evade us and avoid us? What is real? What is not? He's an author. He's an illustrator. And check this out. I'm going to say this a few times tonight. He's a biblical paranormal researcher. Now, What is that? That's my opening question tonight. You already know what I'm going to do. You can read my mind. And but this is what he does. All right. So the combination of all of that, how do they work together? Archaeology and cryptozoology, ufology, and astronomy and the Bible. Yeah, we're going to do all of that tonight and much more. I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Jason McLean, and he's right there. Jason, what's going on, man?
Jim, just normal day in paradise down here, Jimmy. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you. And you already know what my opening question is, so we'll get to that in a second, Jason. But
Absolutely.
first, you get the first time guest disclaimer that you have to accept. So let's get that out of the way. The disclaimer is this. Jason, it's just you and me sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where that conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends. But we're as friends. Okay. Now you have to.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Is that
right?
You accepted?
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely.
All right.
Now the question is, are we friends with benefits, though? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. That wasn't biblical. That wasn't.
It's just a question.
That wasn't biblical. What is a biblical paranormal researcher?
It is specifically to get you to ask that question. That's why I did it. Ultimately the point is that when we approach anything from life, right, we have to sort of state what our paradigms are and explore from everyone comes to the universe with biases, whether we like it or not. But really, it's to get people to ask the question, because people would say, well, what does the Bible have to do with any of this? Well, I would suggest that if you take the story in the narrative of the Bible seriously, and again, what does that mean? Long conversation. But if you at least take it seriously, then you would expect the world to look a particular way, right? I would suggest that what we actually see in the world is what you would expect if the narrative is true. Again, with science, you create you create your theory and you put it into test. You say, well, what do we actually see? Not what we're told that it should be, but what do we actually see when you test something, right? For example, if I want to prove gravity, I should be able to drop this pin. My favorite pin, by the way. It has a little level in it and tools. It's awesome. But I should be able to drop this pin and it should fall 32 feet per second, right? It's that easy. Every time I test, I do it. If every third drop it fell faster or slower, then I got a problem, right? Just that easy. I would suggest things that fall into the paranormal, cryptozoology specifically, and all of these other venues, forbidden archaeology. The reason they are so controversial is that they are, particularly cryptids, are the living and just other examples of the fact that the narrative that we are told is wrong, that it does not actually match up with reality, with what we are experiencing, what we are living in the day to day. And again, here's the thing: you go back 120, 130 years, most of what we're discussing right now, no one would bat an eye. It was commonplace to discuss creatures, monsters, paranormal entities. It's only been within the last 100 years that it was no longer acceptable to have these conversations, right? And the problem is, the reason that paradigm now is breaking down is because people are talking to one another. You know, for all of the ills of the internet, one of the great advantages is we can talk and say, hey, we're seeing things that we're not supposed to be seeing. And that allows us to say, okay, well, then that means the narrative is wrong, because we're all seeing the same thing. My encounter, I didn't tell anybody for 20 years because I couldn't believe that I saw it, because I'd be like, well, that's something that happens in far off places, right? Exotic places, and certainly not here. But as soon as I started looking, I found, and once I sort of realized, okay, I did see what I saw, and I started looking, it didn't take me long to find people who were confirming what I'd seen, but they all had the exact same story. I didn't want to be the crazy person who saw this thing. So again, going back to your question, why? It's so that people ask, what does the Bible have to do with any of this? I would suggest that the narrative of the Bible, the story that it is telling, would predict the world that we're actually seeing. And if that's the case, if the beginning of the book is true and the end of the book is true, because a lot of my work is actually in eschatology as well, then that middle part where we all live, that matters to us. It matters to every human being, every living soul. It matters. And ultimately, that means we all matter. We are not aimless matter that just happens to be here. We're not cattle to be abused. We have transcendental value and are of ultimate value. And that's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do.
That's a really, 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 really good and interesting way to look at it. And you bring up 2 points, so I'm going to address both of these really quick. The internet today obviously has evolved and is different. So if you go back to the old version of YouTube, before live streaming and these influencers and whatever. But if you go before that, YouTube was primarily conspiracy videos of the craziest stuff, whether it was UFOs or Bigfoot or alien Star Wars, conspiracy, Kennedy, whatever, right? It was all there, including way before the Da Vinci Code. YouTube was full of René Le Chateau and the Knights Templar. All right, okay, and I love that stuff, but I didn't buy into it. I enjoyed it as entertainment. If every conspiracy video from old YouTube was true, holy crap, we got it really crazy. But it was fun. Okay, it was fun. Today, people take conspiracies 100% seriously, and they buy into it blindly. It's lemmings to the sea. So we have that issue with today and these ideas. But then you throw the Bible into the mix, and we've got the same issue there. And the issue is this. If you take the Bible as to what it is, everything that we talk about today was already written in the Bible 2,000 plus years ago, right? And is clearly all there, but you can't believe or understand or think about ghosts, UFOs, ET, and strange things in the sky and stuff living in the heavens that are the universe. It's really bizarre. And you have the same, you have the same problem on both sides. If you just back up and go, look, we are essentially talking about the same things, different names, different stories, lots of metaphor, but it's all the same stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine years ago. Again, going back to old school YouTube, right? And we were talking. He goes, "Yeah, I just can't buy into the idea of angels." And this was a guy who was hardcore ufology. And I said, "Well, hold on. You believe?" And this is back before people knew what the word interdimensionality was, unless you watched Star Trek, right? I mean, this is old school. Before Grush and all them brought this into the mainstream. I said, so hold up. You believe that there are extraterrestrials that are comprised of energy that originate in another dimension, right? He goes, oh, absolutely. I'm like, okay, great. How would you describe an angel?
Exactly.
And that's the thing, right? If you were to put me and Giorgio Tsoukalos at a table, we would agree on the following sentence. The phenomena that we refer to as UFOs, again, barring any governmental things, right? The truly bizarre, the truly unique, and sort of out of norm ufology material. The stuff that we're seeing today is the same thing that we're calling UFOs and aliens today is what they were calling angels and gods yesterday, right? We would completely agree on that statement. Where we would disagree is he would say, well, we understand them better now. And I would say, no, I think we had a better peg on it back in the day, right? And then the conversation would have to revolve around why. But the simple fact of the matter is, there is a lot of this conversation and conflict is actually left over from the late 1800s with what was called the conflict thesis, right? That religion and science were opposed. And this was literally we would call it a psyop now, right? This was designed and perpetuated to say, no, we need to get religion out of these things, and we need to go towards exclusively an atheist materialist worldview. And anything that runs afoul of that worldview has to be eschewed. It's literally called the conflict thesis. The problem is, historically, it doesn't work. It's literally particularly in the West, it was the Catholic Church and other religious organizations that created modern science. And it's been very, very recent that these things were reversed or separated. Almost all of the great universities were religious institutions. It was people pursued science because, particularly in the West, Christianity had the belief and understanding that God, was an intelligent and organized, rational being and wanted us to understand him through his creation. It's literally called the two books theory, that you have the Bible, you have the Holy Scriptures, which is revealed, but then you also have the book of nature, which is that God reveals himself through nature. This is literally a 2,000-year-old Christian belief, but it's only been last 150 years that there was this push and drive to separate those two. And what's happening now is people are realizing you can't separate this, right? That the paradigm that has been dominant for the last century and a half is not working anymore. It can't work anymore. We have to understand that, hey, there's more going on here. We can't deny that anymore. So now we're having, I would think, far more productive conversations. But like you said, going back to the old school conspiracy theory YouTube videos, there's a lot of conspiracy YouTube stuff out there about the Bible, about everything else. But what's happening is that they're in that conversation, in that conflict, there are voices that are coming saying, no. Let's actually look at the history. Let's look at the real documents. Let's look at the real conversations that's being had. Let's look at the real science behind a lot of this. We all know that a lot of this stuff is, unfortunately, what's been put out in the mainstream and sort of accepted is false or has been overblown, or it omits the other side of that conversation very deliberately to curate a society that's falling apart. It can't stand under its own weight. And so now that conversation's happening, and I'm just glad to be, in that conversation.
Do you go to church?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Can you go to church? I'm so glad you said absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go to church and talk about Bigfoot?
So here's the thing.
That's kind of a yes or no question.
Well,
answer.
Answer. Okay. So let me. I was like, oh no, my favorite pen.
You got struck by lightning.
I got struck by lightning. So here's the thing. You can't. I will say yes, but here's the yes. Okay. But here's the furthest of this. It's a very recent change. And it really depends very much on the church, because you're right. Again, I would suggest that the church bought into the conflict thesis about 100 years ago. And so most mainstream churches says, okay, we don't want anything to do with the weird, because we don't want, I say it this way, we don't want to look crazy to the people who believe that the universe blew up spontaneously on a Tuesday and we're all here by accident. Like, we don't want to look crazy to those people. So we don't want to scare them off. So we won't talk about the weird things. And I'm like, but they're encountering the weird things too. We're all encountering the weird things. And the weird things speak to the fact that what we have written down is accurate. In fact, one of my big complaints is, you claim to believe in a supernatural being that supernaturally created the universe and has supernaturally told us about his existence, sent his son to live, die, and resurrect, and gave us this book supernaturally, which records all of his supernatural miracles, but you don't want to talk about the supernatural. And unfortunately, that does mean the weird things in life. So trust me, I'm the first one to yell at churchgoers, like, no, you've got to embrace this. Wow. Unfortunately, I think in some instances it's gone, like that pendulum swung too far, where now the only thing they talk about is the Nephilim and all that.
The Watchers.
The Watchers. Yeah. Like, whoa. So it's like, slow your roll. That's important. It really, really is. But don't make it like that's not the only thing. I literally did a video called "The Nephilim Aren't That Important." Like they are critical. I think they are. I think they're like if you once you plug that in there, a lot of things make sense. But it's like that's not the whole of everything at all. It's a small piece, but it's an important piece. I'm all I'm about on anything, right? It's because I grew up as I'm the son of a mechanic. I grew up in a shop. Everything just needs to be where it belongs, right? Because if you put the engine where the transmission is, your car ain't gonna run, right? I just think everything needs to be where it's supposed to be so that everything can move the way and you can get a better sense of what's going on. The world's hard enough, right? There's enough chaos and evil and mystery in the world. We don't need to make it harder by getting things all jacked up. We need the freedom to try and feel around and see what's going on and how to place it there, but also don't go out of your way to make the one thing the whole, right? So I just want to put everything in its place so we can have a better, more constructive conversation. Because if we don't, we're not going to figure any of this out. And I'd like to figure some of it out, at least.
Up until I'm going to freak my audience out right now. I'm not a biblical scholar, but I have a twisted brain. All right. So check
My
this
favorite
out.
kind.
Yeah. Check this out. I love your headshot, by the way.
Thank you.
Is this 100 until 150 years ago? No, let me back up. 150 years ago, a priest and biblical scholar calculated with the Bible when God created the earth.
Yep.
And he comes up with 4005 BC, right? 6,000 years ago. And he comes up with that. That was 150 years ago. 100 years ago. 100 years. We're talking about Einstein. Nuclear atoms, things were kicking off. E equals MC squared. 100 years ago, another priest and biblical scholar who was had a side gig as a mathematician and a scientist, calculates it to the day.
Yeah.
All right. So he goes back and he takes a look at it. I forget what the date was, but it was like October 10th.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's actually very close to my birthday.
Yeah, mine's October 10th. Yeah, exactly.
I'm October 8th. Congratulations.
And the same, right on. Happy birthday coming up. So down to I think it was like 6 a.m. Right? He worked it out like that. Now, up until 100 years ago, that was still the accepted thing on planet Earth. There was no origin story to the Big Bang or the universe or anything outside. We didn't understand anything, and we still thought until 1995 that Earth was that was it. That we were the only star with planets out there. We didn't have proof of anything else. And the reason why I bring that up, that foundation up until 100 years ago is how people were raised. And getting them off of that foundation, you can't explain reason into them. Reason only cements, their position. So to swing off of this, it's going to take some time. I've got friends. I have friends that I love and adore that say dinosaurs were created by God to throw off the non-believers. Right?
Yeah. I have heard that.
I love them. And we argue about it all the time and debate it with a smile, but there's nothing I can say. They listen to this show, but that doesn't change their opinion. It's bizarre.
Right. Well, and again, it's like anything else, right? Most people make their decisions and come to their conclusions not based off of data. And this is every side of any conversation you want to have, right? The vast majority of people don't actually reason their way to a conclusion. They start with a conclusion and then reason their way out of it. And that's most people on virtually every topic, right? Doesn't matter. What's your favorite cereal, politics, religion? It doesn't matter. That's just how people are. A couple of nuances, though, is people did believe in deep time prior to the last 100 years. Like that's, again, there's a lot of just some quick little nuances. And the extra calculation has been done for centuries. But what I will say is this: the Masoretic text leaves off about 700 years that we find in the Septuagint, and there's reason to think the Septuagint probably is a better dating system. However, beyond all of that, there is a conversation that's had, and again, this is the problem where scholarship, particularly in biblical scholarship, does not really make it to the mainstream. And it's, I had a conversation with people like, well, where's all the secret knowledge? I'm like, the real problem isn't some secret torture dungeon under some church or some government agency somewhere. It's a paywall. That's where you want to know where the secrets are. It's behind a paywall, because that's where that's where academia puts all of their papers.
Nicely said.
Thank you. So I appreciate it. I worked that one out for a while. But the simple fact of the matter is, when we're looking at a lot of these ancient texts, they were looking at things differently, right? They weren't necessarily trying to say, here's how we create a timeline that you can go back and date things by. They weren't really trying to do that. There was a different narrative happening. So, so things happening maybe deeper in time than we would do if we were just to use the raw numbers is probably not that shouldn't be a problem for anyone, because really a lot of these things we miss culturally. I really recommend a lot of Michael Heiser's work on this. The late Dr. Michael Heiser, he was a Semiticist. But a lot of dates are symbolic, because if you look at the time at the dates, a lot of this is very, very different. But like I said, the Septuagint gives you like an extra 750 years versus this. However, what the one caveat I would throw in there, though, is our dating methods are, and sort of the assumptions that we've had for a lot of this deep time is proving pretty sketchy at best. We can hold off on the cosmic stuff, right? Something's hundreds of millions of light years away. Let's put that to the side for a moment. The things that we can actually test, right? Like, I think we should be able to do carbon-14 dating on just about anything that was alive, right? The problem is we're doing carbon-14 dating on dinosaur bones and the soft tissue within it. And we are getting thousands of years on that. I would suggest the bigger problem is we have fossils at all for a lot of this stuff, because the only thing we know, again, things that we can test and observe, the only thing that creates fossils is water, is mineralized water, right? And one of the big issues I have is, why do we have trackways? When was the last time you took a walk on the beach or you walked in the creek and your footprints were turned to stone? And they weren't just washed away after the next rain. Simple fact of the matter is, no one watching this, not me, no one's trackway has ever, walking on the beach has ever turned to stone. A lot of these animals, the reason we can have soft tissue in them, the reason we have soft tissue that's been mineralized as well and preserved like a statue, like the Ankylosaurus, where you can just see the whole thing. We have internal organs.
I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
I do have to stop you.
Mm-hmm.
If they were walking in dirt or sand or us, no, that stuff washes away. Footprints in clay with minerals in it, that's a wholly different. I just said holy. I just said holy. It's a wholly different situation.
It is.
And it dries out in a day under the baking sun, and one thing turns into another, and that is rock before you know it. And there are clay artifacts today. I have some.
Oh, absolutely.
That are 5,000 years old, and they were never fired in a kiln.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the difference there. But continue.
Yeah. But so again, that's a really great caveat, right? The thing is, though, those footprints that were left in, like, we have nothing but clay up here in North Texas, right? Where we live on a giant limestone slab and then black clay, and then it's red clay up north, right? The problem is they're still washed away by the next rain. The clay in the ground is never going to harden the way. And again, I've Heck, I've dug up
No,
otter that was never killed.
you're absolutely right. We're
So
talking about, because if it was just a situation there where all ancient footprints turned into fossils, we would have bazillions of them. You know how many we have on this planet? You can count them on one hand.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
it's a very, very rare situation. But in those rare situations where the clay hit the sun and then it was arid for the next 10 years and they went through a drought, whatever it could be, then magically those footprints were preserved. But the other part, the carbon dating, and I've had a lot of biblical people on this show discussing this with me, and the contamination of other stuff that is there, and there's more accurate ways to measure this, and these dates are coming back at 3,000 years instead of 75 million. I get that, but it's the fossils, the majority of fossils that we find that are under layers of sedation, and you can measure that, and you can go back 50, 75, 100, 400 million years and find out a better accurate date. You don't have to carbon date any of that. You're measuring it through other things. And you've also got layers of radiation, volcanic ash, that all of this stuff can be timed with celestial events. So there's accurate things that support that. I mean, that would support for me to keep me from going crazy.
Well, and I get where you're coming from. Here's my problem with that, though. The issue is, particularly with most dinosaur bones, are actually found on the surface. They're not they're not found in quarries per se. They are found in quarries, don't get me wrong, but most of our big finds are literally, they find dinosaur bones on the top of the surface of the matrix that it was fossilized in. Now, one of the issues, though, with stratigraphy is a lot of this is based on assumption. There's a paradigm as to how that stratigraphy was laid down, that it does take millions of years for that each layer represents so many tens of thousands of years of deposits. The problem is that is very much a paradigm. That's not necessarily something that we can prove. And the issue, this goes back to the issue of how did they get fossilized in the first place? And I don't necessarily know that the carbon-14 dating is in itself accurate for any of these, really anything over 2,000 years. After about 3, it starts getting sketchy. But the problem is we shouldn't find carbon-14 at all. We shouldn't find carbon-14 in coal, which we do pretty regularly. And this isn't some super secret thing. Again, the paywall, right? Carbon-14 experts have their own journal. Like every scientific endeavor has its own journal, right? They've talked about this. Carbon-14 is still found in diamonds. It's found in coal. The simple fact of the matter is, if there is carbon-14 in the soft tissue that has been preserved in dinosaur bones, that's a problem in and of itself, because no matter how far you push out carbon-14, because carbon-14 after 50,000 years is basically gone. It's the half-life, it only gets you about that far. The same thing with any organic material. We know the decay rate of organic material, DNA, any kind of soft tissue. No, you can double it, triple it, push it out as far as you can. The most you're ever going to get in the optimal situation is about 1 million years. My issue is, well, where do we get the other 64 million or 119 million for some of these triceratops? There should be zero organic material left at all, much less carbon-14. And this goes back to my original point. In order to have footprints fossilized, because again, it's not just that it's in clay, it's stone. In order to have anything fossilized, it requires heavily mineralized water. The most common fossil in the world are aquatic fossils, right? Marine fossils. They're everywhere, particularly here in Texas. Like, we used to be water, like we used to be under a sea. And then eventually, I guess the water realized, oh crap, this is Texas. I'm not supposed to be here, and just left. Because trust me, water does not like to be in Texas. But what we have with a lot of these fossils, particularly fish, is we have whole schools of fish that looks like someone just went, you're fossils now. We have fossils of fish eating other fish, like in the process of eating them. We have marine reptiles giving birth, and the infant is partially out, and it's still immediately frozen.
A lot of stuff like that in China too,
Yeah.
as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we have dinosaurs that were essentially fighting each other, and they're fossilized in that event. Again, the dates I'm actually a little agnostic on. I don't think we have enough data, much less honest data, to come to a conclusion as to when these things occurred. What I do know is the story of the Bible is that there was a perfect world first. It was destroyed in a water-based cataclysmic event that reshapes everything that we know. And everything that survives is a lesser version of what came before. It's a smaller version, just whatever could be saved.
I've never
of
heard
what
this
came
story.
before.
What is this story called?
It's a little known tale.
But every culture's got that story
Yeah.
too.
And
It's
every
pretty
culture
impressive.
has that story.
Yeah.
And the simple fact of the matter is, again, I'm the son of a mechanic. I like easy things. I like just work it out. Like what's the sort of obvious kiss method? Keep it simple, stupid. If things were to be, if everything was in a perfect world and lived longer, what would you expect to find? Larger, more robust animals, and probably humans as well. You would expect things to live longer. They would have denser bones, much larger. And then you'd expect everything after this radically changed world where things don't live as long to be smaller, more fragile, right? More gracile than what came before.
So
Well,
how
what
does Bigfoot fit into this? I know
Well-
that's where you're going. I'm just jumping
Eventually.
Well, because I'm going to dovetail this straight into Bigfoot.
Go for it,
There
please.
has Smithsonian cover-ups.
Of course.
There has been reports of human and dinosaur footprints next to each other.
Oh, yeah.
And now for all of us, I don't care if you're religious, if you're scientific, or if you're like me and you're full of woo and you love the conspiracies, where that's not the dogma we have been taught.
Right.
That simply cannot be by about 72 million years.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Not
Exactly.
supposed-
Well, my
so
sighting
does
doesn't
that-
conform to that too.
Well, I want to hear about that right now, because dinosaurs, apparently, if those stories are true about humans and dinosaur footprints next to each other, fossilized, that means either dinosaurs lived past 300,000 years ago when Homo sapien sapien shows up, right? Or Homo sapien sapien is much older than we are told, right? There isn't really a gray area there. Now, if it's the opposite, where dinosaurs were more recent than what we are told, then that means other extinct species that are supposed to be extinct or non-existent are walking this planet right now, like Bigfoot, right?
Exactly. Precisely. I would say that the third option is that maybe there isn't the deep time that we're told, because a lot of that is based on is not just based on assumptions. It is based on a paradigm. It's based on a belief. This isn't science versus religion. It is religion versus religion. Atheism is its own religion. People don't want to say this. Like, no,
it is.
Like,
Oh, yeah, it is. It is.
But it is. It is a religious belief by definition. So
Bigfoot Michigan Rob says hi, by the way.
Oh, BMR, good friend. His book. I did the artwork for all the covers of his books.
Oh, okay, right on.
So here's where, let me just go ahead and tell my story, and allow me to show how stupid I am sometimes. We all get to be that way, right? Yep. So I'm 12, grew up in DeSoto, Texas, just a little bit north of where I am right now, and like every kid of the 80s, right? I'm the last year of Gen X. We grew up in the creeks and going out, and your mom's like, don't come back, and I don't want to see you until you have to be home for dinner, right? Particularly in the summers. So I spent all of my time in the creeks. And as I mentioned before, North Texas is essentially on just a giant limestone slab. And so particularly in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, all of our creeks essentially go into the Trinity River. The Trinity River goes all the way out to get into Galveston Bay, and it's the only reason anything can live in North Texas at all. One of the creeks that was like right behind my house was the 10 Mile Creek. Now, I do have to say this. Texans are amazing at a lot of things. Naming things creatively is not one of them at all. Why did we name it the 10 Mile Creek? Because it's a 10-mile long creek. I'm just sorry. Like it's like, why do we call this Cedar Hill? Because it's a hill with a lot of cedar trees. What's Lake Texoma? It's a lake between Texas and Oklahoma. We are terrible at naming things creatively. But I did spend my childhood basically growing up in this creek. And the thing about North Texas, specifically around Dallas, we have yearly flooding, really bad. And so we basically kind of have to isolate the areas around our creeks because you just can't build anything there. It'll get destroyed. And a lot of our bigger creeks are essentially cut into that limestone rock really, really deep. And really all of our tallest trees and shrub is around our creeks because that's where the most water is. So you can't see into a creek at all around here, particularly of any real size. But because once you're in it, though, like the 10 Mile Creek, you're 15, 20 feet below street level in most places. And it's just sheer limestone rock on either side. And you have this, what I call the green wall, just flanking you. You can't, the only time people can see you is if they're on like a bridge looking down. You could be 3 feet from the edge of one of these creeks and not know it because of how dense the foliage is. Well, there was this place where the wall had basically broken down and collapsed and created like a little bit of a shore, and you can get down into it. And it's also where a lot of the runoff would go into the creek. And so we'd go down there to fish all the time, right? Fish,
you went
swim.
down there and smoked weed with your friends.
I am actually allergic to weed. So
really?
Unfortunately, that's not my experience. I'm not saying
watched the Yogurt Shop Murders, by the way. Have you seen the documentary?
I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it. No.
Okay. It's all about the Creek kids.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
I would have fit right in. So yeah, I mean, I grew up fossil hunting in this creek, and we would go fishing and hanging out with things that probably were a little bit more dangerous than I was giving them credit for. Mm-hmm. But one day, again, it's about summer. It's 92, so I'm 11. I'm again October baby, right? Libras unite. And it's about 10:30, 11, and I'm fishing with a friend, and we're done. We're just packing up. We're heading up. He's already up the hill. I'm just now getting up the sort of collapsed wall when I hear something I've never heard before, right? And to this day, the only thing I can describe it as, it was the sound of like a really ugly crow. Like, I don't know any other way to say that, right? Just imagine a crow cawing. It just sounded like an uglier version of that, and loud. It was really loud. And so I just popped my head.
I don't like that sound. Yeah, that sounds really creepy.
It was, I was like, okay, that's weird. And so, because again, I grew up there. I know what everything is. So I'm sort of like in the tree line, and I'm elevated now. So I'm like 10 feet up. I poked my head out. I'm like, what the heck was that? And I see what I think is the biggest blue heron I've ever seen in my life. Right. And it just comes because again, I'm in like the middle, like here's the creek kind of winds through DeSoto, Duncanville, and all that. And I'm sort of sitting in the middle of a straightaway, and it comes around the corner, and I see, again, I think it's the biggest blue heron I've ever seen because it's got an 8 to 10 foot wingspan. I mean, I know how big the creek is. This is like, I've seen blue herons before. So it's like, okay, that's a really, really big blue heron. And that's all I think it is. It's the biggest blue heron I've ever seen. I'm like, that's really cool. And then it gets right here in front of my face, and its right wingtip is 5 feet from my face. And that's when I realize it doesn't have feathers.
Oh,
when you see a heron fly or a stork or a crane, they'll do that thing where their neck kind of doubles back on itself and rests its head on its shoulders, and it sticks its legs out behind it. Well, its head was basically doing that. That's why I thought it was a heron. It's the same color as a blue heron. It's sort of a Payne's gray. But what I thought were its legs sticking out behind it was a tail with a flange on the end. And I'm just looking at this like, what am I looking at? And I just watch it. It never even flaps its wings. It just glides and then banks and disappears. And that's it. That's my whole story. And my friend comes back down. He's like, dude, what's going on? I'm like, did you just see the pterodactyl that flew by?
Yeah, right.
And he's like, dude, don't. I just want to get lunch, and he just leaves, and I'm like, well, okay, what do I do with this? Like, I didn't feel fear at all. It was just like, what am I like? I'm just shocked at what I'm looking at. So I go back. I actually still have the book. It's my favorite dinosaur book, and I was like, I'm flipping through because it didn't look like a pterodactyl, right? Because the thing you see on the Flintstones was stealing Raquel Welch, right? It has the beak and it has a crest and it's big and it has no tail. I'm like, that's not what I saw at all. So I'm flipping through, and I'm like, oh, here it is. And I found the Rhamphorhynchoid family. They basically just look like really big lizards with wings and long tails with flanges on the end. And I'm like, well, that's what I saw, but I couldn't have possibly seen it. Like,
some would call that a demon.
Well, we can talk about that in a second because that's
yeah. Okay. I want you to stay on the story.
Yeah.
But if that was a sighting 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, in the time of Moses and Ramses, you've got a whole nother story. That's a new chapter in the Bible, right?
Well, actually, actually, they would call them dragons. They had a place for these things.
Took the words right out of my mouth, right?
And you could, it's arguable that the fiery flying seraphim of Isaiah are a similar species, but that's jumping ahead of the story. Because I didn't believe my own sighting because I'm like, I live in Dallas, Texas. Like I'm right, like I don't live anywhere exotic like Loch Ness or the Congo or Papua New Guinea, right? I live in the 7th largest conurbation in the United States. If people were seeing this, I told myself, certainly other people would see them and they would talk about them. So I'm like, Jason, you're an idiot. You're fine. I will absolutely double down on the fact that I am an idiot because I don't, and I mean this like I can't remember if it was the next year or the same year, The Mysterious Origins of Man comes out on NBC. My dad gets the special cassette that came with it. That was sort of it goes on NBC, and he gets the side thing. And it's the first time I learned about David Hatcher Childress, right?
Yeah.
And he's talking about the pterosaur sightings in South Texas, specifically the Brownsville flap. Yes, pun was always intended when people talk about that. And I'm like, wow, people have seen these things, but that's South Texas. That's a good long, like Brownsville's a long way away. He talked about the Rio Grande Valley. The Rio Grande Valley is really far away from here. So I'm like, okay, so that can't have anything to do with what I saw. So I must be wrong, or I must be misseeing what I saw. So I put it in the back of my head and I ignore it. It's like, it's there. It's like, I don't know what to do with it, but whatever. And I don't tell anybody. My father would have believed me. I spent again, we went to the Creation Evidence Museum in the Plex that's there in Glen Rose all the time. I know a ton of people would have believed me. I didn't believe me, so I didn't bother. I had no way to prove it anyway. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Over the years, I do things that's like, in the back of my head, I can look back on it now and say, well, subconsciously, I realized I did see something. The world is weirder than we think, right? But like I said, I'm not that bright of a person. Many, many years ago, I met Ken Gerhardt, right? Famous cryptozoologist. And here's where it gets worse. I have a special copy. It's a mutant copy because it's a double print. This is the freaking cover of his book, Big Bird. Modern Sightings of Flying Monsters. That is literally a Rhamphorhynchoid pterosaur on the cover. I didn't tell that man for years about my sighting because I'm like, that happens in other places, not Dallas, Texas. And so eventually, he and Lyle Blackburn do a pilot for a show they were trying to pitch, and Lyle posted, it's like, hey, we're looking for stories about swamps. And I just decided to be a smartass and say, does a pterosaur sighting in a creek count? And he goes, actually, that's one of the episodes we're doing about southern Oklahoma. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? The video is still online. It's an American Monster Tour. That's my first public conversation about this. I had been in the community, the cryptozoology community, for years. And if you count creationism, going back to the 90s, I've been around for a while. But my public side of this starts there. And I'm seeing videos, and he's talking about these people that he has spoken with very recently. from southern Oklahoma. That's an hour and 40 minutes north of where I am. And they're describing the exact same thing I did in the exact same way I did. So I start going, I spent a year, I actually took a year off of work to write my book eventually. And I meet a ton of people who have the same story here. In fact, there's literally like a causeway between where I live now, where I used to live in DeSoto. I'm sorry, out towards West Texas. And I have dozens of accounts now of people, and they all say the exact same thing. I thought I was looking at a pelican, or I thought I was looking at a crane, or something, a heron, something like that. And then I took a closer look, and I realized I wasn't looking at that. And I've got one that said an owl, but it's because it happened at night. She's like, and then it flew in front of my headlights, and I realized it was a pterosaur, because she goes, I have all these younger brothers, and they all have these dinosaur toys. Like, that's what I saw. And I don't like to count things that I can't say that really fits that niche. But if I were to include the dozens and dozens of stories that I have from people who are like, I didn't know what I saw, but I was driving in from West Texas, and this thing flew over my car. They use the word bird because that's the only word they have, right?
Right.
They're using their vocabulary, but it's like, and it was this massive bird that flew right over my car. If I include those, I'm 30 stories in of people but everyone also said the same thing. I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want to look crazy.
No, how many? There are tens of thousands of sightings like that are in people's minds only. When I was a kid, it says 1974, 1975, not 76, but 74, 75 in Indianapolis. Okay.
Yeah.
I live in California now, but I'm in Indianapolis. I'm in 6th grade. And suddenly, for about almost a year, 6 months to a year, there were pictures, film on the news, in the media, reports through central Indiana about Thunderbird sightings that had 20-foot wingspans.
Yep.
And one of my stepbrothers was into bird watching, and they both kind of got into it, but he was like in a bird watching club in high school or something.
Right.
But so he had his binoculars, he had his book, he had his pad, you're out and you're checking out,
yeah, of course.
Bird watch. And he heads out one day. I go, where are you going? He goes, I'm going to go look for the Thunderbird.
Yeah.
Right. It was like a thing.
Yeah.
And these were normies, Jason. This wasn't right. This wasn't you and I in our group of crazies. These were the normies that were spotting these Thunderbirds. Now, okay. I wonder, were the sightings, including yours, are the sighting, and this goes to Bigfoot,
right?
Are the sightings physical sightings of a species that is alive, or is it a ghost?
Now, you see, that's a really great question. And one of the things I would suggest is, particularly with Bigfoot, and we can sort of, and this absolutely plays into it, because I've asked myself the same question. I wouldn't say ghost necessarily, but some other paranormal entity, maybe taking
residual, interdimensional, crazy
something,
event.
Right?
Yeah.
It's. I think it's easier to start with question mark rather than, because I think we lead ourselves astray by trying to pin things into something we don't really know yet. It's like, I'm okay with saying I don't know what it is, but we can't take things off the table if we can't take it off the table, right? And in fact, one of my theories about Bigfoot is I think the problem is we have multiple phenomena that we're actually putting into a box that we're labeling Bigfoot, which is one of the reasons we can't really move forward, because we're calling a lot of different things Bigfoot. It's become sort of the nom de guerre of anything that's forcing.
It's a catch-all. Right? It's a catch-all.
Exactly.
Sure.
So I do. So I think actually, particularly for Bigfoot, I think the vast majority is paranormal. Particularly when you have things that aren't necessarily seen in broad daylight. I think there's a lot of things seen in broad daylight, though. Again, could it still be paranormal? 100%, right? But with Bigfoot, we have tracks, we have scat, we have kills, we have things that are a little bit more along the line of what you would expect with a physical creature, right? Per se. Now, the fact that we don't have a body, I think if we don't have a body in the next 5 to 10 years, then I think we kind of have to say, okay, purely physical for the what I would call the NOBI, or not naturally occurring biological entity aspect of the phenomena, probably off the table, right? We tend to forget we've only been looking for these things for like 60 years, and that's not a long time, all things considered, really.
Look at the giant panda. Giant
Yeah,
panda.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't realize so many of these really elusive animals we don't have evidence of for like a century or two. It really takes about 60 or plus years to actually really find some of these more elusive creatures. And if, again, the naturally occurring biological entity aspect of the Bigfoot phenomena is intelligent enough to stay the heck away from us, and I understand, I want to do the same thing too, Bigfoot. Unfortunately, I've got bills to pay. Then it is going to be harder to find evidence of them, particularly if it's a very, very small population. But the simple fact of the matter is, there is a paranormal aspect to a lot of this, which is why I can't rule it out until we have a body of a pterosaur or Bigfoot, and it doesn't go Buffy the Vampire Slayer on us and just poof and out into just ash. We can't really say for certain that it's a physical creature. What we can say, though, is we have accounts throughout history of people killing these things, right? And seeing the bodies. We have accounts of people slaying dragons. In fact, specifically the Rhamphorhynchoid variety is why, again, going back to the demon thing, I would suggest we can actually prove that they were a physical species because of a dragon body that was displayed in France in the 15th century. Long story there. We can come back to it. The simple fact of the matter is, there are accounts of these things being killed and then just being like, okay, well, it's a body. Same thing with Bigfoot, or what we would call Bigfoot. The problem is there's also enough weird paranormal stuff that's like, we can't rule that out of any of this. And I think that's what's leading, because we ain't got the Spookatron 5000, right? Patent pending. We don't know. We can't objectively observe the paranormal, the supernatural, the interdimensional, whatever word you want to use. We don't have the ability to objectively observe that. So to rule that out is way premature, particularly when you kind of line up some other things. For example, you wake up in your bed and you see a tall, dark figure with red glowing eyes, and you feel menace. You're like, that's a demon, that's a shadow person, maybe my in-laws. But if you unzip your tent and you see the exact same thing, suddenly it's a Bigfoot, right? A lot of what people would consider to be traditional a Bigfoot encounter where you don't see a Bigfoot also lines up almost perfectly with poltergeist activity that has been recorded for thousands of years.
For sure.
And so I think the problem is, I am very open to what I saw being paranormal. But I also don't want to start at, well, it has to be paranormal because of, well, that's an assumption. What I saw was there. People have seen it. We have records of something similar being killed and put on display. We shouldn't rule out physicality, right? Same thing with, again, Bigfoot. There's clearly a paranormal aspect to it. In fact, I think some of the paranormal aspect of what we would call Bigfoot, of the Bigfoot phenomena, wants us to think it's Bigfoot. Because what do we do when we see a Bigfoot? We run out there and people are investigating. We leave food out for it. It's all the things you would do if you wanted to be worshipped, right? And that, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think we do need, and simple fact, anyone who's researched Bigfoot for a long enough period of time has had weird stuff happen to them, stuff that can't be described or explained normally, right? Through a purely physical creature. In fact, you can see the exact same phenomenon when people go looking for elves.
Same thing.
Yeah,
Same thing.
it's the same thing. So the simple fact of the matter is, there is sufficient evidence from what I've seen that's publicly available and privately available. I really wish some of the stuff would come out that says, okay, physicality is an aspect of this phenomenon is fairly certain. But I think a much broader spectrum of, I mean, again, all of this is probably paranormal, and probably one is okay with us thinking that it is Bigfoot or Goatman or La Lechuza or whatever, as long as we don't recognize them necessarily for what they really are, because then we would put our guard up.
Right. Whenever I hear somebody report a pterodactyl sighting,
Hmm.
the last thing I do is dismiss that. That could that what they saw was real to them, but it could have been interdimensional, could be a ghost, could be residual. Physically, they saw it and it was a pterodactyl,
Hmm.
but what caused it? And then we have something like in Vermont. It's a crazy story with all of these witnesses. 1880, a stagecoach, 4 passengers, 2 drivers, right? Okay.
Right.
Up in Vermont, going between cities with luggage. It's the Greyhound bus, right? Okay.
Right.
And then what was described as a large, hairy, crazy man,
Yeah.
naked, came out of the woods and attacked the stagecoach and shook it until the passengers jumped out. And then he turned around and ran back in the woods. And so they called him the
Hmm.
crazy hairy man of the
Yeah.
woods that was naked. Now, wait a minute here. Let's just
Hmm.
stop and just analyze what, and these people who are normal, they've got to report this. The local newspaper
Hmm.
picks up on it and so forth. But, they considered it a crime. A crime was committed and their stagecoach was attacked. And they blamed it on the naked, hairy, crazy man of the woods.
Yeah.
That, what you read that, you don't. Was that the drunken, hairy, naked man that lived in a cabin that was making his own moonshine that's out attacking
Hmm.
stagecoaches? Or, right?
Right.
Or, was it something else? Was it Bigfoot? Was it,
Yep.
something else there?
The Caddo. In fact, my actually, again, not my first introduction to Bigfoot. I've been aware for a long time, but my first sort of in the field interaction with Bigfoot was actually something I wasn't anticipating. I was in, it was my archaeology class out in uh, deep East Texas. I went to SFA, and we were out looking at this experiment that was being run, right? And it was sort of run out in the woods, and the idea was they would set up these uh, sort of recreations of Caddo mounds and homes with the pots things, and then they just left them alone to see what would happen. How does nature reclaim these things so we could better understand what we're finding when we dig these things up, right? And
Very
so we
cool.
were out in the woods, and I kept seeing these young saplings that had been bent over and sort of twisted into these X formations. It was very clear that they were like 8-10 feet off the ground, and they were in these, they were bent over specifically. And I'm like, what's with this? And one of the girls who was, I'd never seen anything like, again, I grew up hunting, right? It's like, that's weird. Why would anybody do that? And one of the girls who was from the area said, oh, that's the Stick Indians. Well, that time I think, oh, it's probably just like a local term for the Caddo that still lived in the area. And it was probably some sort of religious thing, right? And I don't even ask. I'm like, that's probably what's going on. It isn't until years later I find out that Stick Indian was a term for Bigfoot by the Caddo, very specifically. They're like, these are these Stick Indians. They viewed them as just another weird people group. And there are accounts going back for hundreds of years, even of European settlers. In fact, even here in North Texas, we have accounts of people saying there's just these weird people that live out in the woods. Like, they're just weird. That's all that they, again, because these were normies. They were just trying to live. They didn't care, right? It's like, okay, there's these weird people out there. As long as they don't bother us, we don't care. People told stories of this creature that would go up and down the creeks. They were called the monster, the creature, and they would howl, right? Like these accounts go back for centuries, and it's very consistent. In fact, one of the earliest sort of Bigfoot accounts comes from, and I actually found where it was from the report, was actually here in Waxahachie. It's one of the oldest accounts that the BFRO has from like 1932.
Best Bigfoot video
Mhm.
that I've ever seen.
Yep.
Shot by a friend of mine's daughter. Well, they were together,
Really?
the family, in Galveston.
I
In
believe it.
friggin' Galveston. And they were down there, 4 of them, family, right?
Mhm.
They're down in Galveston after this tropical storm or hurricane came through. what year is this? 2025. So I'm guessing 2015, 2014.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're down there and they're walking through this like marshland area of Galveston where the oil fields used to be, right?
Yeah.
Down there.
I'm
And
very familiar.
Yeah. And they're on this dirt road, gravel road, and there's nothing there. There's no trees, right? Just grassland. Yeah. And the daughter who is walking next to I don't want to say their name. But I have the video. And she's over and she's like, man, what's that? And he's filming too. They're filming the devastation of the storm, right? That came through. Mm-hmm. And she goes, no, up ahead of us. And so she's filming, and then on the road, I'm gonna say it's close, a quarter mile. What is that? 400 yards, right? Yeah. Reasonably close, maybe 200 yards. But up in front of them is this dude walking on the road away from them.
Yeah.
And she's been filming it for a while. Now he's filming it. It's all on cell phones. And he zooms in and she zooms in. Both the cell phone videos, I will say this, are a different quality. Different cell phone, different settings on the phone. Right. It's father and daughter, this and that, how it zooms, all of that. But filming the same thing. All right. Now, what you see when they zoom up is all black. Okay. No clothes. Yeah. No shoes. Right.
Right.
All of that. Just
solid black mass. Yeah.
Just with this step. Right. And so anyway, they decide to catch it. So they're walking faster and faster. You can, he's filming it. They're like, you know what I mean? Practically jogging. And you can see him, the Bigfoot, turn around and look like this while he's walking. And he turns and he looks behind him, blackface, and pretty stout, almost square-like in its build, right. I mean, like no hips, right? Just anyway, now they're running. And dude is walking, but they don't catch him. He's just like walking faster.
Right.
And they look and he turns left off the road. And there's nothing there. There's no trees. There's it's just flatlands. So he turns left off the road and goes down. The road is up a little bit. Anyway, so he goes down into the grass. They walk up and they're filming it. They don't see him anymore. They go all the way up to where he turned off the street, turned off the road, and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
He's gone. It's a trippy video.
Yep.
It's a trippy video. I've got that guy blown up. I've got big monitors. I've got him blown up. It's not perfectly in focus, and it's a 10-year-old cell phone video. But you can see what you see, and what you don't see are clothes, shoes, hands, face, head, hair. It's a trippy video. It's one of the best. It's one of the best.
I would like to take this opportunity to do something I'd say in a lot of videos, which is for everyone watching this video, please, whether it's live or on replay, buy a real camera. These things are wonderful pieces of technology, but they're not actually cameras. You can get some really decent cameras. You don't have to spend $10,000 on a lens. Just get a decent lens and take it out, learn how to use it, practice with it, and then take it out whenever you go out. Because we are one good camera away from being able to just sort of blow all this open. Because the problem is the private stuff I have seen are from people who are like, I can't go forward with this because if I do, I'll lose my job, right? That kind of stuff. What we need is someone who's willing to release the photographs and say, just do, heck, I'm a notary public. I will notarize your affidavit saying that this is what I saw. This is a real photo, right? And say, I took this photo here's the camera I took it on. Here's the original. Here's all the metadata. Here it is. Here's the photo and video of the creature that I saw. That's all we need to really, because I guarantee once it becomes okay to talk about this publicly and say this is a real thing, we're going to have sportsmen and hunters and nature enthusiasts who have careers in this and have $1,000 setups for rigs. They're going to say, yeah, here's my stuff. We just need them. We just need something that can push them to say, yeah, I saw this thing. Here it is. Here's my picture. Here's my video on a $10,000 camera, right? That's all we need. Because again, I didn't believe what I saw. Because I didn't think anybody had seen anything like I had seen in Dallas. So I didn't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
The Thunderbird spat in Illinois that you were talking about. There was a kid during that time who was attacked by one of these birds in broad daylight. His mother and friends saw it. He had scratches on his body. And after they told the story, people would call him Bird Boy at school. They would leave dead birds in his mailbox. And they had to move because he saw something he had an encounter that does not fit within the normal prescribed paradigm. And therefore, he had to be ostracized. The thing is, there's just enough of us now that have had these encounters to say, hey, say what you want, but this is real. And I got dozens of people saying the exact same thing. And a lot of these are normies. Most of the people, I don't like stories from people like us because
right.
We're programmed. Like, here's the thing.
No, I love the stories. I love the stories from people like us, but those are just stories. Okay, when you get it from a normie, just somebody that, and I love that. Okay, so when somebody meets me, it's one of two things. I get met by somebody that's a fan and has followed me for years, and they can tell me about their favorite show, number 447 from 2013, that I don't remember. All right, there's that. And then there are those that have never met me, heard of me, or any of this, but when they find out what I do, they go, oh, that's cool. You know what? When I was a kid, that's the story I want.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Again, for people who are fans and know, like, I want to hear your story. That's fine. But the thing is, we're already primed to see it. Like, I've had 2 other sightings. The problem is I don't want to call them sightings. They were in the right place and sort of the right time. But the thing is, I didn't get a good enough look. And I don't want to say, in the back of my head, I'm like, hold on, you didn't get a good enough look at these things again. So you can't say that's what you saw. What you saw was a split second of that was weird. And maybe it was, but I don't want to say it because I don't want to go. I know that my brain is trying to see it again, right? So if you're in this world, you want to see the weird things. You're looking for it. Doesn't mean you didn't see it. But when someone who's like, oh, you're writing a book about weird things? Well, let me tell you about this weird thing that I saw.
Right.
It's like all of these stories, and I do mean this, all of the stories hold on. Let me do this quick shill. Metroplex Monsters, Dallas Demons, Fort Worth Goatmen, and Other Terrors of the Trinity River. Available wherever fine books and trashy rags are sold. Every story that isn't, taken out of, hey, here's this historical account. Only the accounts that I have taken personally that I use in this book are the ones that are basically from normies. Because I didn't want the people who were necessarily into this. And the only exception I have is one of the people who saw La Lechuza, and the only reason I would say she breaks that mold is her aunt that she was living with was the Curandara, which is sort of a witch doctor it's the wrong term, right? But most people say, oh, it's sort of like it's not Santeria specifically, but a priestess of a syncretic, Catholic, Mesoamerican, cultural belief. But it's like, with that one exception, every one of these people are normal people who are like, hey, this happened to me and I don't know what to do with it. Right. And so I'm
going to share this with you, and you can respect that I can't get into specifics.
Yes.
But and it's too easy to nail down who I'm talking about if I get into specifics. Too many people can do the research. So I'm not going to get into that. But I will say this. I'm with a bunch of people here in Los Angeles at a highbrow get together in a big home.
Right.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to say anything more than that. But the husband of somebody that was there, who I am introduced to, turned out to be, I can't give away too much, an international commercial pilot.
Understood.
I can't say for who, I can't say for what. I'm not going to get into that. But I pull him aside, and he doesn't really know me. He knows what I do from the introduction, but he's never, he doesn't know anything. And but I'm pressing him. I go, so ever see any crazy shit? Nope, 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 nope. It's almost like, dude, go get away from me,
Yeah.
And then, but maybe about an hour later, and I think he was watching me interact with a few people that he knew, and we were having a good time and laughing. So I wasn't that bad of a guy.
Right.
So about an hour later, we're talking, and he goes just like this: Jason, some things you just can't make up. This is what he says. He goes, all right, we're out over the Atlantic. I go, okay. And my co-pilot and I are looking straight ahead. It's the middle of the day. I said, all right, where are you going? Doesn't matter. I said, okay, you're over the Atlantic. He goes, yeah. And we see in front of us a big black thing at our altitude. And he turns to me and he goes, do you see that? I go, I do. And then we noticed it wasn't moving.
Yeah.
And we were headed straight for it. So I started to lower altitude just a little bit, but it wasn't on our radar, but we could see it. So we didn't know what was happening. He said, but we closed in on it really, really fast. I said, what was it? He goes, a mile-wide black domino.
Yep.
And I said, what? And this guy, he's whispering to me, he's like confessing.
Yes.
He's on the couch, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm a psychiatrist, and he was cleansing himself. And I said, so what happened? He goes, man, we flew right under it. I said, what? And he goes, dude, we talked about it for about 2 minutes. We stared straight ahead, and we were stunned. We talked about it, and that was it. I said, so what happened? Nothing. What do you mean? Nothing happened. So you cut? No. I've never really told anybody but my wife. And I said, really? Now, so just like you, what does he do with that? He has the experience. What do I do with it? I didn't go on the air. I didn't call TMZ. I didn't go on Coast to Coast.
Yep.
Okay, man. So I heard this at a Hollywood party, and so said that. No, that's not my business. It's up to them to tell the story. And if they're not comfortable with it, again, the stigma with a career like that, you know what?
Yeah.
He's not telling anybody.
Nope.
And I remember they call the planes that they fly, they call it their equipment, right?
Right.
He goes, I worked my entire career to be the pilot of the equipment that I am on, transatlantic international commercial pilot. I'm not messing that up.
Exactly.
I'm not.
I have heard, not necessarily that specific job, but I've heard that 100 times. Like, there are accounts from people in this book that I had known for 20 years. And it wasn't until I said, hey, once it became known that I was talking about the Nephilim at church and I was writing a book about this stuff, people would come up to me and say, "Hey, Jason, I got to tell you a story." I'm like, "I have known you for 20 years.
Yeah, I know, right?
What is going on?" And he's like, and they would all, well, I didn't know who to tell. I didn't know what to do with this. I don't have a framework or a paradigm for the Lake Worth Goatman, or for the pterosaur that I saw, or this ghost, or whatever. Right? It's like, I would argue that probably, if people are being honest, I don't know that it's 51%, or I don't know that it's 60%, but I think the majority of people have had at least one encounter that they're like, I don't know what to do with this.
99%. I'm going 99%.
Hey, you're an optimistic person.
No. I think everybody
don't
has it. No, but they put it in a box. They put it on a shelf. Life goes on. And I had a roommate who I just saw a few months ago. One of my oldest friends, high school, the whole shot. After high school, we got a house together. Party house, man, at the age of
Understood.
19. Yeah, okay.
Been there, done that.
His name's Bruce Pfeiffer. And how do I say this? 50 years of friendship. Okay. All right. He's listening to me on Coast. He's watching me on TV. He's, checking out. He calls me on my friggin' cell phone 5 years ago and goes, "Hey, man, I never told you this, and I don't talk about it, man, but I saw a UFO when I was a kid. Land on the freeway next to our houses, the 70 freeway, which is in between my house and his. And that's the freeway that goes from like the East Coast through Indianapolis to Denver, right? Okay, the 70 freeway. And so anyway, I go, "What?" I go, "Bruce, everything that we have done," right?
Yep.
Friends, things, everything, the thousands of days that we have spent together. And you're just now telling me this? He goes, "Man, I was looking at it through the window from my bunk bed. I watched it for an hour. I saw the semi trucks pull up and it was blocking the freeway. And I wanted the thing. And I was, what happened?" And just like you're saying, he would have never told me if he didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to say, if I give too much information, that people will know who it is. Well, they can find out who it is. An individual personal to me who knew I was writing the book, has known me for a very long time. And it actually kind of irks me, because I literally just sent it off to the publisher. And I'm like, I could have had that story in the book. But this individual lives not even half a mile from where I had my encounter. He lives just on the other side of the creek that I had my encounter in. And he calls me one day. Says, "Hey, Jason, can you tell me if any of your weird friends see like Mothman or something, or if there's any reports like Mothman in the Dallas area?" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, just let me know. I'm like, "Okay, well, what's going on?" He goes, "Nah," and it's done. It takes me like weeks to coax this story out of him. Finally, he's like, "Okay." I was washing the car. I look up and he describes what he saw, and I drew it out. And he's like, it kind of looked like a person, but I didn't see the head, and it flew right over him, and he had these wings that go out. And I'm like, "Dude, that's a pterosaur. Like, you just described a pterosaur." Again, broad daylight. He goes, "I don't believe that those things are still running around." I'm like, "Well, okay, but at least you told me, and I have a record of it, right?" Again, it doesn't mean it is a pterosaur, but I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, the way this looks, like, yeah, that's probably what you saw." And the simple fact of the matter is, again, whether it's 51 or 99%, I think the majority of humans have had a weird encounter, and in the vast majority of them do not know what to do with it. They don't have anyone to talk about. And it's been, again, 200 years ago, people would have told that story, right?
Right.
But about 150 years ago, that became taboo. And we're just now getting out of this very short-lived, taboo. We can't talk about the things that make the people in white lab coats, the priests in white lab coats, unhappy, right? And that's all this is. And so again, do I know exactly what I saw? No. Do we know what Bigfoot is? No. I mean, heck, the big one of the earliest and biggest Bigfoot encounters happened 40, 50-ish miles from where I live at Lake Worth, right? See, dozens of people saw this creature at the same time. It was seen by dozens of people over multiple days. And it's all in the record, all of it. But people don't want to talk about it. You can literally trace these things migrating to East Texas from Fort Worth, and then using the creeks to get out to the Trinity, right? Out to, so they can sort of migrate out in that direction. You can map them with the stories, but people were terrified to tell their stories. And
let's take our break right here. Let's take our break. We blew past the break. The conversation is just too good. Our guest tonight, Jason McLean, and we're talking about what's going on in Texas, Bigfoot. And when we come back, Jason, you're going to tell me what a Goatman is.
Absolutely.
We'll do all of that next. Jason, you stay right there. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Beckley Teppy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut.
Jimmy Church Gaia TV, Fade to Black, here at Machu Picchu with Brian Forster and Hidden Inca Tours. Amazing tour so far, Brian, but we're here to announce what we're going to do next year in 2026. What's going on?
Okay, November 2026, we're going to have our major tour of Peru and Bolivia, either a pre or post tour of Paracas and Nazca on the coast. And then after that, 6 days in Easter Island.
Bucket list, Easter Island. Come join Brian and I and his amazing team here at Hidden Inca Tours for Peru, Bolivia, and Easter Island. Signing out. Say goodbye, Brian.
Bye, gang.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jason McLean is with us. We're talking about Bigfoot. We're about to get into Goatman and the strange stuff in and around Texas. Wow. And if you're just now tuning into the show, catch the first half. The biblical stuff was absolutely amazing. And now, before we get into Goatmen,
Yeah.
Just about every culture on every continent throughout history has dragons on their family crest,
Yep.
on the country's flags,
Yep.
on counties, on castles, on homes, religious sites.
Mm-hmm.
Dinosaur fossils weren't discovered and identified until the mid to late 1800s.
Yeah.
That was a modern
Mhm.
discovery. Most people think it goes, so they wouldn't have had any reference to a flying reptile like that, let alone have every culture have it represented, representing their cultures. How do we explain that?
Well, okay. One little bit of nuance. Every culture has a dragon, but every culture's dragons are different, right? This is one of those things that we tend to, in the modern age, we sort of gloss over and say, oh, they're all looking like the same thing, and we represent a dragon the way we would do in, like, say, Game of Thrones or whatever, right? They all looked very, very different. They were all describing radically different things, but they were often reptilian with bird-like claws. And that's probably the most common aspect. Northern Europe, though, we do have things that sound more like Stegosaurus. In fact, we have some in China that sounds like that. I think the easiest answer is because they saw it, right? They saw these things that they recognized as distinctly different from the normal fauna that they were used to, right? That's just all that's the Occam's razor of it. And the simple fact of the matter is, it was different enough. They're like, this is weird. They're rare, but they're larger. There's something about them that's weird, which is why they were a part of the natural world. And so, as time goes on, like anything else, right? They get mythicized as they go extinct and become a smaller population and just aren't inhabited or aren't encountered that often. But as late as the 1800s, we have dictionaries and like books and references on animals that discuss dragons as just normal things. They're like, hey, this is this kind of dragon. They're very, very rare, but they're still around. Like, people were talking about these things. And this goes back to sort of the thing I mentioned about France, right? In the 15th century, 14th, 15th century, there was this farmer who accidentally killed this little dragon that he found. It was hissing at his cattle, and he was just trying to shoo it away, but he hits it in the head with the staff and it dies. He's like, oh, I didn't mean to kill it, but all right. So he ends up taking it to Paris into this museum, and it goes on display. Now, about 100 years later, though, artists come, and over about a 20-year period, they draw the body. Now, we have to remember, they couldn't preserve things back in the day, right? They didn't have formaldehyde, so these things weren't put into jars. So what they saw was a recreation of what they had seen 100 years before, right? It was a gaff, right? Where, if you don't know what a gaff is, think about a Fiji mermaid, where you take a monkey and, it's a taxidermy thing, right? Like jackalopes. So they had taxidermy, and we know this because the artists were realistic artists at this point. Like, that art had sort of evolved a little bit, so they were trying to do more naturalistic artwork.
It was their version of photography.
Correct. And so, again, this is about 100 years after this thing was killed. And so it's very clear we know what it was made out of, because they did a very, very good job of rendering this creature. However, what's really interesting about it is it has a tooth coming out of its snout. It has a long neck. It has wings, and it has 3 claws where where the elbow would be on a bird, right? But there's 3 claws coming out there, and it has a long tail and only 1 pair of legs. Anyone who is familiar with dinosaurs recognizes that as a rhamphorhynchoid pterosaur. The word rhamphorhynchus means, which is what the species was named after, it means tooth-beaked. These pterosaurs didn't have true beaks like a pteranodon did. They were essentially reptiles that had teeth, and specifically the Rhamphorhynchus had a tooth that came out of its nose. It sort of gave it this beak-like appearance, but it wasn't a true beak. What's really interesting at this time, though, what we think of as the dragon's tail, right? That triangular diamond-shaped flange at the end of a very long tail that because of its association with dragons becomes associated with Satan and therefore devils, right? That enters into the visual, nomenclature. Artwork, all art is a language, right? It's not just, it's a visual language. Tropes and things like that evolve over time. There is no account or rendering of a dragon with that diamond-shaped tail prior to that time. It enters into heraldic art at that time. That's when we start having the dragon's tail. And a lot of people who maybe are familiar with dragons would say, oh, well, hold on, that sounds like a wyvern, because we have statues of it that's very specific. It's one pair of legs, one pair of wings, a tooth coming out of its snout, and a flanged dragon's tail. That's a wyvern. That art that enters into heraldic artwork and then eventually enters into popular artwork after that event. So what we have is what is clearly a gaff, but it has 3 features that are unique to Rhamphorhynchoids as a pterosaur. And then you have a 4th feature, which is that flanged tail. Again, that flange is made of soft tissue, wouldn't save anyway. And it enters into heraldic art, and then from that popular art at that same time.
What year was this?
It's so the dragon was killed the 14th century, and it's in the 15th century that you start having these naturalist artists rendering it, right? So the simple fact of the matter is we can trace it to this event, and it makes the most sense. Like, oh, well, this is a dragon. We can actually look at it and figure out what a dragon is supposed to look like. That's when we start getting things that look like that, instead of these weird chimeric versions of a crocodile or a snake with bird's legs, right? Because again, we have to remember the people who drew these things didn't see them. And even up until with a few examples like the Greeks, and then until the Renaissance, people weren't really doing naturalistic art. They weren't trying to. That wasn't in their vocabulary visually. So people are just describing things using the language that they have and the things that are familiar to them, and people are just recreating it as they were told. There wasn't this idea of saying take it seriously but not literally. We see the same thing with the Jersey Devil, right? That the very public encounter that's had, right? That we get that drawing of what looks like a deer standing up on its hind legs with a bifurcated tail and bat wings, right? That came from a Philadelphia artist in doing for the newspaper. He took the story, or he took the accounts literally, and he didn't take them seriously at all. But we have dozens of people describing this thing. But if you actually read what they're trying to tell you, and you take it seriously, and you realize they don't know what a dinosaur is, right? It is a large creature with leathery wings. It doesn't have a bird's head, right? It's a longer face, but it doesn't have a bird's head, and has a bifurcated tail. That is the devil's tail, right? That's literally where the term Jersey Devil comes from. They are describing a pterosaur. That's what's being described. The problem is the people who are rendering the pictures don't take it seriously at all. They think it's just a whatever. And so the problem is we now have that image in our head versus what they actually saw. And that's really how a lot of history has gone. We look at the renderings of people who've never seen these things and aren't probably taking them 100% seriously anyway. And we're like, well, that must be what it is. And it sort of throws off the fact that if you just look at the descriptions because there's definitely 2 different types of stories, right? There's the mythological stories where they're talking and they're doing, but then there's just, hey, I saw this thing and it was eating my sheep, and so we killed it, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or in China, there were these things, we captured some and we had them drawing the emperor's coach for a while, right? And then, or hey, there were these things out there, we don't like going out there because they kill things. There are these stories they're just animals, but they're so bizarre that everyone's like, okay, this is a thing that exists in our world. That's why the Chinese have them on the zodiac. That all the other, constellation, all the other things in the zodiac are animals, right? They're normal animals. Same thing with everything, and they all just, this was a thing. It was a part of the world. They accepted it. I think the vast majority of mythological creatures are things that have gone extinct over the last 1,000 years, or had such a small population level that they're just so rare, people don't really see them, so we assume they're extinct, right?
When you see how many winged dinosaur fossils come out of China, you don't see it as much, or if at all, from other countries. China, boatloads.
Yeah.
It's like Tuesday in China, right?
Yeah.
They find so they obviously have seen this over and over again throughout their history, so much so that it becomes part of their culture and becomes an identifier.
Yep. Just
We're
like
looking
anything
at
else.
we're looking at modern fossils, but man, and some of them are remarkably preserved, like complete.
Yes.
Complete skeletons. Okay, before we run out of time, I like what the describer says. What's a Goatman?
So that's a really great question. I would suggest that what we have, and I wouldn't have come to this conclusion had I not written this book, right? There are accounts around all of Texas, but specifically North Texas, since that's what the book is about. It's my hometown. It's a love letter to it. Going back to the dawn of time, there are stories of these half man, half bovine, half goat creatures that occupy a mythological space, right? What happens here in North Texas is we have the Lake Worth monster event in the 60s, right? People go out. It's clearly a Bigfoot with mange. I would put out there. However, Jim Mars's articles label it a Goatman because that's what one of the guys. It was like a goat person, right? So the name sticks. And what happens?
What half is man? What half is goat?
So if we go all the way back to say Enkidu, right? It's the earliest depiction of Enkidu is he's human up top, but he has the horns, but he has bull's legs, right? You've got the satyrs from Rome. The fauns were Roman, satyrs were Greek. You've got the Leshy of Indo-European mythology, where it's human up top, has a pair of horn or antlers, depending on the culture, and then has, again, goat or bovine. It's hairy, hooved backwards facing legs, right?
Right.
Digitrade legs. And so what happens in North Texas is, again, we have these stories of the creature or the monster. There's all these little stories and tales of a hairy hominoid creature running around. But the name Goatman blows up because now we have radio, right? And television. And so there's this big event and people are talking about it. And so now the name Goatman gets superimposed over every local legend in North Texas. Every Iron Truss bridge that basically has a version of the hanged man mythology, now it becomes Goatman, right? What's really weird though is you could say, okay, essentially it's just people were saying, okay, this was this is clearly a Bigfoot, but now it's Goatman, and so now the lore changes and moves. But White Rock Lake, people actually have seen a goat-like person in broad daylight. The most famous story was collected. I forget the name of the original book, but I know Nick Redfern wrote about it as well. He collected that story as well, of a woman. She was jogging broad daylight around White Rock Lake. This is in Dallas. It's not downtown Dallas, but this is Dallas, right? And this thing steps out of what I would call the green wall, walks towards her, smiles at her, kneels down, disappears in a blinding flash of light. The second story, which that's the only publicly available story up until my book.
What year was that?
It was the late 90s.
Wow.
Is when that occurs. But here's the thing. Quick, guys, buy it. I actually double the amount of publicly available information on this. So there's my little niche in the crypto
Well,
world.
yeah, and we've got the links
Yeah.
below. Everybody, just click and head over to Jason's site. Everything that you need is right there.
And so this was actually a person, again, another person known to me personally. I'd known this man for 20 years. And he's like, so Jason, I got to tell you the story that happened to me in the 80s. And again, I didn't say, hey, do you have a story? He just like, I got to tell you this story, right? And again, he and his friends, it's the late 80s. They were at Snuffers, which is a big, sort of bar pub thing in Dallas at the time. It still kind of is. It's run down now. Anyway, they end up going in the middle of the night to walk around White Rock Lake. It's him, his friend. They got the dates. You know how it goes, right? And they're walking. One of the girls gets sort of ahead of them, and then she turns around to sort of make fun of them, and then she screams, and they turn around, and standing in the light of a street lamp is this creature. He said, Jason, it was like 6.5, 7 feet tall. It had goat-like legs. It had goat-like horns, and it was just looking at us. He goes, I don't want to act like I'm brave. We all screamed and we ran, and I ran faster than the girls, and I did not care. He goes, I don't know what the heck that was, but that's what I saw. He goes, that was the Lake Worth Goatman. So it looks like in a lot of places, the Goatman name is superimposed over the Bigfoot lore because of Jim Mars's articles, and that leads to folklore. Like in the 10 Mile Creek that I was growing up in, there was the myth of the Hinky Man, right? It's clearly because we have a lot of Czechoslovakians that moved here to Texas. We have a lot of Czech, so it's clearly a derivative of Krampus, right? It's a guy who wears big heavy coat. Right. And he goes around, he finds all the kids who are down there smoking the ganj and drinking and stuff. And he kidnaps them and kills them and puts them in a bag. And it's like, clearly this is Krampus, but it connects to Bigfoot sightings as well. So what happened is the Goatman myth, name turns into this lore, but for White Rock Creek, it is a literal Goatman. But here's the thing. I have several other stories where that occur off of the tributaries from White Rock Lake. Because again, everything drains into the Trinity, right? And every lake in North Texas is artificial. We dammed up creeks and rivers to make because water doesn't want to be in Texas, right? There are these accounts that happen off of tributaries of White Rock Lake where it's clearly connected to the Goatman. It has the backwards facing legs, things like that, but it has none of the goat-like features. It's like a protoform, right? It's almost, it loses the hair, it loses the antlers, it loses the humanoid face, but it still has the backwards facing legs. It's like the further away it gets from the mythological center, it becomes less distinct. It's almost as if the lore is creating the creature or giving the creature a form to take. So this is clearly a paranormal entity. I mean, let's face it. There are no half people, half goats walking around, living off the garbage in Dallas, right? But there are paranormal entities. And it seems like the connection to these areas where the stories exist are creating either it's a thought form, like a tulpa kind of thing. I actually don't like that term because it's very misused from Zen Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, but people know what I mean when I say that. So this is either some sort of thought form kind of thing, or the mythology and the common belief gives form for this physical entity to enter into our reality, and that's the form it takes. Either because of collective belief or however you want to slice that pie. I'm willing to say clearly the mythology has something to do with it because it's taking that specific form. At the same time, though, that form goes back thousands of years. Just like La Lechuza, the owl woman of Latin American lore, is very easily connected to Lilith and the harpies and of Greek mythology. Like, there are these themes, these concepts that go all the way back to recorded history. And we see them today. We just call them by different names, and they seem to manifest it slightly differently depending on the cultural expectation, right? And that's really what's kind of going on here, which is why I'm willing to believe that my encounter could be paranormal, right? But I wasn't expecting to see a living pterosaur in Dallas, Texas. That's one of, but if you're at White Rock Lake, oh, well, hey, maybe I might see a Goatman, right? So some of these creatures seem to have these paranormal entities very specifically take forms that we expect them to take. And it does seem to be very culturally driven.
I am reminded of, I know this sounds strange, but hear me out. In one of the early Carlos Castaneda books,
Mhm.
all right, I don't know if it was the Second Ring or or whatever, but one of the first three. So
Right.
I'm reading it, and he's down in South America somewhere, Central America. And he goes out and he's with what he calls a witch.
Right.
And they go out, they're on a mountain, and they go to the edge of this cliff. And this is how he describes it. I'm going to change it up a little bit because I can't be as descriptive as Carlos
Right.
Castaneda
Yeah.
or anything. Plus, I read this 40 years ago. But anyway,
Yeah, that kind of puts a damper on things.
but it's never left my brain. He says that he's standing next to this witch, and she reaches underneath her skirt and urinates in her hands, takes it and flings it out over the cliff into the air, right? And then she walks on it and starts running and flying, right?
Oh,
now,
I believe it.
Yeah. Now, so just we need to stop and think about this. Was Carlos making it up? Okay, all right. It's a good story. Was he just on some crazy drugs and this was a hallucination? Or, right, did he witness this?
Yeah.
And what was it? And so the tie-in for me with the phenomena is that when we're talking about pterodactyls or thunderbirds or Bigfoot or any of this stuff or Goatman, Mothman, right? Where he's witnessing this, he's describing it in a modern context.
Right.
So we can understand it in a modern way. You push that back 1,500, 2,000 years and you take the same event, you've got a totally different description,
Correct.
a totally different event, a totally different piece of folklore, mythology, or a news clipping or a woodcut, right?
Yeah.
you know
Oh,
what
exactly.
I mean?
Yeah. One of the things I say a lot is that folklore is not phenomena. And the thing is, folklore is far more about the cultural context that these things exist in. It doesn't mean that I'm not saying that the folklore isn't real or that it isn't surrounding something that's real. What I'm saying is when we read these stories, when we see, we have to understand everyone's trying to process it from their worldview, from their perspective.
Correct.
And it's going to have different meaning to them. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means we need to understand. And I think one of the great crimes of the Fortean researchers, and I'll throw myself under this bus too, I think we all do it to a degree, is we want to cherry pick what we discuss and what data we take in. I'm not saying we take in absolutely everything, but we need to understand the data for what it is, right? We need to say, okay, I'm not a big fan of using the term Thunderbird for these things, for these aerial phenomena, because that word means something to the cultures that created the word. And if you look at what they thought the Thunderbird was, it was a deity. Again, different tribes had different interpretations of it, but this was oftentimes a creator deity, a storm god. It could take human form. It's like, I don't like usurping other cultures' phrases because I think I can use it to make my point. I don't think that's, I think that's counterproductive and it's disrespectful. I am a Christian. I'm not, but so it's like, I don't think it's really a God that they were talking about. Right. But at the same time, I don't want to disrespect that culture because those were human beings made in the image of God and they're worthy of respect. We need to interpret, we need to take their stories from them first. We don't need to chop it up and skin it for parts, kind of thing, right?
Right.
Let's take everyone's folklore and say, okay, it is folklore. Let's understand it from their perspective first, and then let's see if maybe there may be a through line here. But I think we either take it too seriously to the point that it becomes useless because now we're trapped within their own framework, or we just strip it for parts and now it's divorced from its original thing, and we're sort of using it to support our own personal beliefs. It's like
to reinforce it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and it's like that both are unproductive and dishonest to a point. We just need to understand, though, that this is all real, and we need to understand it from their perspective and from their frameworks. And the simple fact of the matter is, I've got too many. The church I grew up in was very big on missionaries. My wife is a missionary kid. Like her family are missionaries. There are stories I could tell you that would freak out the hardest Fordian because of stuff that happens in the jungle, where it's like, hey, these are people who are doing the real stuff and they believe it, and it gets weird, and it gets real weird real fast in a way that we're like, nah, that can't possibly be a thing. It's like, no, it is. And that stuff does happen here in the US. We just don't talk about it. We've gotten really good at shutting the F up about it because we don't want to upset the priests in the white cloaks, right? Because that's really what this is.
Or your
boss.
Or
well,
your
and again, the reason your boss,
your wife,
your wife, But again, the reason they're scared is because, well, we don't want to be called crazy by the people in the white lab coats, and I get it. Again, that was me. Again, I knew Ken freaking Gerhardt for years before I told him my story. Like, again, I'm not the brightest bulb in the drawer here, right? I'm just as guilty as anyone, but we're coming to a time when we can actually talk about this. And the simple fact of the matter is, a lot of these, particularly the more paranormal entities, are clearly, there's a cultural connection that how they express themselves. And I think we need, until we recognize that, it's going to be harder to, because when we realize a lot of these things are taking the form that we expect them to take, it's going to be hard to recognize what's paranormal and what isn't, particularly if we're calling everything Bigfoot or we call everything Chupacabra, or we need to be willing to say, tell me your story. Let's take that data and then let's see where it sort of fits. And let's stop, as I'm sorry, a lot of Bigfoot researchers have done over the last 60 years, up until very recently, all the elements of high strangeness from some of these stories were whitewashed out.
They don't want to talk about that. They don't even want to consider it. For the most part, I think it's changing now. I saw in Peru, I saw a condor flying.
Yeah.
If I wasn't told at the time, check it out, a condor. If I would have just looked up in the sky and saw that, you know what I saw? An airplane.
Right.
It was that big.
Yeah.
Right. The wingspan and the way it looked. And here's another direct point. Leprechauns.
Yes.
And little green men. The same thing, right? So the folklore turns it into leprechauns, 500 years ago in Europe and Ireland and the UK. And it becomes a story, a folktale. Okay, I get that. But it's all based on something first.
Yes.
And then, so we look today in Little Green Men and Martians. But here's the tie-in for me, where as a kid, I started to wonder about things. And that was the Great Kazoo in Flintstones.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I love that character.
One of the best. One of the best.
Dumb.
And yeah, absolutely. But what that did to me, because I'm seeing the same things. I'm pouring my Lucky Charms on Saturday morning, right? Yep. I got the leprechaun on the box.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm watching the Great Kazoo on TV and watching a movie about Little Green Men and Martians that night. But I'm seeing the same symbology.
Yes, 100%.
Everything. And so to me as a kid, I made all those connections. As an adult, we fight those connections.
We do. And because, again, regardless of what, I would take the position of 1,000 years ago, their cultural context turned them into leprechauns and elves and, trolls
under the bridge.
Yeah. And then, but modern folklore turns them into little green men and grays. And the problem is, again, we assume, because of the hubris of modernity, that we know what we're dealing with. And the problem is, it's just another folklore. In fact, can I piss everybody off right now with
That's
something?
what we're here to do.
Folklore doesn't mean what you think it means. Academically, folklore is nothing more than just the teachings and cultural expectations of a culture. That's all it is. Science is a form of folklore. Teaching your kids to brush their teeth once or twice a day, or 3 times a day, whatever you want to do, that's folklore. That's just as much folklore as how to interact with the Fae. It's all folklore. But we were like, no, we have cell phones and computers, and we have people in white lab coats. We know what the world is. No, you don't. Everyone would have said the exact same thing 600 years ago, before we knew microbes were a thing, right? The problem is, we're interacting with the universe we don't really understand. And for the last century and a half, we have not had a vocabulary for the supernatural. And I've done this in a lot of my other books. Again, most of my work is actually in eschatology. But C.S. Lewis wrote in Screwtape Letters, I'm going to paraphrase it real quick. In Screwtape Letters, he hypothesizes about what he calls the materialist witch. Because he points out that, again, Screwtape Letters is basically like the premise is it's a demon writing to another demon, right? He said, if you make your person a witch, you can torment them and have all the fun you want. But at some point, they're going to think about God, and you could lose them. But if you make him a materialist, he'll never think about God, but you can't torment him. And then there is this sort of thought process of finding a way to create a materialist witch, which is someone who could believe in something supernatural, but ascribe to it a physicality, a naturalism to it. So you can torment a human, but they'll never think about God.
Sounds like you're talking about Richard Dawkins.
There you go. Well, it's more prevalent than we would like to think, but that's really what the modern UFO movement is. It's taking all the supernatural elements of the Fae and all of the supernatural, elves and the ancient gods of the past, and all of those things, but then wiping a Star Trek coating of paint on it. And yes, I do love Star Trek. I'm a Babylon 5er though, hard sci-fi all the way. But that's all we've done, right? And if you look at them closely enough, you're like, well, hold on. Everyone, again, Giorgio Tsoukalos and I were sitting at a table. It's like, yeah, the UFO phenomena today, particularly the abductions, looks very much like Fae interactions and leprechauns and all that from 500 years ago. But I would ask, yeah, you're right, 100%. But where's the spacecraft equivalent? They don't have a spacecraft. You go down into the earth. That's where fairyland is. But again, George would agree with me that the events in fairyland look very much like what happens on a spaceship. So what happens? Well, it's like it's taking a new culturally acceptable context. It's no longer.
Do you want to go out to dinner with Giorgio? I can set that up. Sounds like you want to do that. No, I'm being serious.
I would be happy to. I will have a conversation with anyone over queso, man.
I think you need to I think you're manifesting this, and you're talking to the right person. So,
hey, he can come on down. I'll make him my famous queso. He'll love my queso. He'll agree with me after it. The power of queso compels.
Okay, off the wall. We're into overtime, so I'm going to keep you for another 5 minutes or so, if that's okay. I am in love. I'm not gay, but if I were, Captain Pike.
Okay. Strange New Worlds.
Strange New Worlds is amazing.
So I'm one of those guys who I hated Discovery because I think they were trying to push too much.
No, Discovery was good. It was good. Okay. And so many Trekkies just poo-poo on Discovery. When they made the time jump,
when they made the time jump into the
Right.
future, it got good. Okay. I
Right.
think they
I
were
love that.
trying too hard in the first 2 seasons. But I will say this. I am a DS9 fanboy. Everyone's like, are you Kirk or Picard? I'm like, friggin' Cisco, right? But for me, it is DS9, Strange New Worlds, and then probably Enterprise, but then co-equal becomes like TNG with it. Like, I think those are both equal. But Strange New Worlds is as good as any Star Trek has been. And
So good.
Picard season 3, the first 2 seasons,
No,
you
no,
can do with
Picard. No Picard. No Picard.
Well, I would just
in
say
the
season
conversation.
3 has one of the best episodes in Star Trek history. Midway through, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. It's the bar scene with the captain, with the other captain. I'll just say that. Where he's talking about him being recluse. But yeah, Strange New Worlds is beautiful.
Worlds is so solid.
It
is just so good and very creative. And it's gotten to the point now where I don't give a shit whatever's about to happen, because it is so well written.
Yeah.
And the whole wedding thing with the wedding planner, a few episodes ago.
I liked that.
Well, I was on he's been on the show many times, and I've also been on his podcast too as well. And I thought it was a strange casting at first. But anyway, not to get side, everybody just go and watch it. But being that creative in a show like that, in the science fiction, space adventure like that, that is taking chances with the script. And it was really, 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 really well done.
Yes, it was excellent.
The last episode where everybody becomes Vulcan.
Yeah.
Have you seen it? Did you see it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I saw the one. I watched the new one this morning.
Oh no! It just can't. Don't stop.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say. I won't say a word. But it is really good.
As soon as this show ends, I'm heading in there to watch that.
Oh, you should. It's very good.
But I know it's good. But okay. But I want to make this comment. All right, and I've talked to a few of my friends about this. Spock has turned into, or is in Strange New Worlds. He's a hoe.
Yes. Yeah.
He's a hoe.
Yeah. He absolutely is. That is I think it's called Trek Central. I think that's the group. They do a thing that's they are leaning a lot into the relationship aspect of a lot of these characters. And I'm like, yeah, really the relationship that they have completely ignored that they need to focus on more is Pike and Spock, right? Like Spock literally,
Spock at this point has slept with everybody.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone. Yeah. No,
he's spreading the seed, man.
His space seed.
And so his space seed.
Yep.
And it's one of the interesting aspects of this, because when we look at the Kirk Spock, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm making sense. Where, so conservative and reserved and smart and drop it. We never knew what the word logical meant until Spock started spewing it in the 60s. But that version of Spock is not, that's the evolved, mature Spock.
Right.
He was a tramp, apparently, growing up.
Yeah, he's got a little tramp stamp on his back somewhere
that
we've never seen.
Right here. He does. And how about what's her name that plays the nurse, the blonde?
Oh, Chapel. I cannot remember her name. Nurse Chapel is the character, but yeah,
she is unbelievable. She's so cool and such a great actor, and plays the role really well. And that relationship that he had with her, I don't want to give anything away. If you haven't seen the series, go and watch it. But that I got sucked into that relationship. Yeah. And then as we move on, as Spock moves on from her, and he needs to get back on the horse, as they say, right? But the dance scenes with Spock, where he we got to remember, he's not supposed to have emotions, not supposed to be happy, sad, any of that stuff, love, right? And yet presenting him with moves like that, and a tango, and the bonding, the spiritual bonding that they have together in those dance scenes was incredible. But that is creative writing, and that's what makes Strange New World so special.
I love Strange New Worlds. I was really looking forward to it and it is delivered very consistently on just good old fashioned Star Trek, where you can have weird, funny things, right? Like, it's not taking itself too seriously. So when it is serious, it's like, oh wow, like this is profound. And again, I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but the individual from like 2 or 3 episodes ago, that was introduced at the beginning of the season, and then what happened to him happened. Like, that was genuinely heartbreaking, the way that they've handled what we would call red shirts back in the day.
Yeah,
the way they've handled them, very, very well done, and it's excellent writing. And one of the things they did, and I loved it, but also it pissed me off because I did one of the early books I put up online was a sort of a unofficial Star Wars fan theory, just saying, hey, I think I got something. It happened before they even came out with the second of the new series. So some of the stuff, whatever, but it was fun. But one of the things I've had, people in the Star Trek fandom have been arguing between Prime timeline and Kelvin's, like, well, is this Prime? Is this not? One of the things I had sort of been saying for a while, and I wish I'd written it down so I could have gotten credit for it, is that I don't even think like the original movies with Spock and Kirk happen in the same original timeline that the show happens in, right? I think every time someone's going back and forth, they're altering the timeline. And of course, we find out in Enterprise the temporal Cold War. I think essentially every series or every segment is happening in its own revised timeline. Like the Kelvin timeline is like the most dramatically revised, but every single one is its own unique timeline that's been modified. And they did that in season 2. We're like, yeah, no, every time you modify the timeline wants to fix itself to a point. So you're going to get the same people doing similar things. It just may take a little bit more to get there, or may get there a different way, but you're going to have all the same people doing the same things. And I had sort of already thought of that, and they sort of confirmed that in the second season. It's like, the reason everything looks different in this series is because it's still the Prime timeline. It's just not the timeline that we're used to because of all the time travel shenanigans from all the other series, right?
But yet it's all familiar.
But it's all the same because the timeline wants to fix itself. That was the whole point of the mirror universe.
And the way that it's filmed, the way that it's acted, and the sets, and this and the it's all, you don't have to stretch your imagination or go, oh, come on, man, what a bunch of shit. No, you don't do that with Strange New Worlds. You mentioned the episode 3 episodes ago. That again, one of the most creative episodes, except I knew the ending. I saw it coming. And the reason why it was the cannibal ship, right?
Okay, so I was actually talking about the one before that, but yes, I did love the cannibal ship. Yes.
Okay, so the cannibal ship.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the piranha ship, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm watching, and when they showed all the bodies float, when they blew the ship up, so they wouldn't get eaten. And I went, watch this.
Yeah.
I know exactly. And when they zoomed in, and I was like, oh, I saw that coming. Again, very
but that's
creative.
Classic Star Trek. Like, that was a very, again, this show, one of the reasons it's so good is because it's like, hey, let's take all the best elements of the original series, right? Those the funny, weird things, the things that are just over the top. Let's take all of that. Let's retranslate it into a new context, but let's do something new with it, right? And again, that cannibal ship was I loved that episode. That was
so good, man.
That was one of my favorite episodes of the entire series, because again, it's classic Star Trek, but it's done. It's fresh. I like what you said. It's very familiar. The show is familiar but new at the same time, and they've done a great job on that series.
I have wanted to. I'm not enough of a Trekkie to know everything about they've had dozens of series in the movies and the time, but I've watched the original series, all of it, and that's a commitment.
It is.
Those 2 seasons, would they have like 50 episodes a season, something crazy?
Yeah, it's nuts. I have to say, I haven't even done that. Like,
Oh,
I
have.
I need to. I very much need to. I did go back and watch the episode with Cochrane, the guy who invented warp drive. Zephyr
Oh,
Cochrane.
yes.
I had to go back. I went back and watched that, and that was one of those things where I'm like, oh, well, this is evidence right here that the timeline's been messed up. But yeah, I made a film. The rest of them though.
I made a corporate film. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
With James Doohan.
Really?
With the company. And so Doohan, I got to spend a week with him. Everybody at our company did, and those that were part of the filming of this it was a 15-minute. We shot on film.
Nice.
Dude. On film. At a studio here in Hollywood. Anyway, that part doesn't matter. So later on that year, our company party, our Christmas party, Doohan is invited. Herbie Hancock is playing, right? It's our company party. Yeah. And I go in, and we had two sections. We had the bandstand, but we had this back lounge area. And I walk in, and there's Doohan sitting at the table.
Wow.
And I come up, and I go, hey, man. He goes, hey, man. He goes, the thespian. That's what he called me. How cool is that? How cool is that, man? But yeah, I got to hang with him for a minute. Now what I did want to say, and I wanted to wrap on the Star Trek thing, because I'm not the in-depth crazy Trekkie. I'm not that. I'm not the Galaxy Quest. Trekkie. I'm not that. I'm not. But what I am is a newcomer to the party, and I have fully analyzed not only Discovery but Strange New Worlds, and I am totally sucked up in it to the point where I could almost, and I want to almost do a podcast on Strange New Worlds and Discovery. Not the old stuff, because I tried to watch that Picard thing that came out last year. Yeah. It was horrible. And people loved it. And people loved it. Okay, that's fine. I watched the first episode, and
Picard requires a lot of nostalgia. Like I said, the first two seasons, I didn't even watch the second season. I'm like, I'm done. I don't care. But the third one, I'm like, I'll give it a try. It has one of the best scenes in episodes of any Star Trek in it. But I will say it is very, very nostalgia dependent. So I understand.
I can't get sucked into it. I don't have the energy. But what's cool for me is that Discovery and Strange New Worlds are standalone things that start in their own stories. And so for me, it's all fresh, it's all new, and I understand what's going on. But I am totally sold on Captain Pike, and I didn't think I would. Yeah. So good. So Jason,
Anson Mount's amazing. Love it.
He is so good. Everybody, the whole cast. I'm sucked in. I'm in. I'm sold. Jason, thank you so much. And where can everybody reach out to you?
I mean, I'm on Facebook. But again, you can find me on YouTube as well. And again, website Siru Papers, SIRU papers.com has links to all my stuff. I don't live on the internet, but you send me a message. I will try and get back to you as quickly as I can. I do have a life to pay bills and all that. But again, I'm around. Books are out there, and just reach out, say howdy. Always happy to say hi. Particularly,
I really enjoyed the conversation tonight, and I'm inviting you back on the show. I will have Michelle reach out to you, and I really look forward to our next conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Again, pleasure's all mine, and we'll be happy to talk about Star Trek anytime.
Perfect conversation. Thank you so much, Jason. Enjoy your weekend.
I'll do my best.
Jason McLean, everybody. Jason's links are below. We haven't gone into overtime in quite a while. That was a lot of fun. Thank you, Jason. And yes, it is my Friday. It is your Thursday. So everybody enjoy your weekend. Have a great time. Be safe and do it right. You know what to do. I will see everybody back here on Monday. But until then, all I've got is go Backley Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.